wonder of nature, baby!
Yes, we'll reel around the flag, boys will reel it once again, shouting a battle cry of freedom. We will reel it from the hillside, all together from the plain, shouting a battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors, up with the stars. We will reel around the flag, boys, and reel it once again, shouting a battle cry of freedom.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of Uncut History. And let me know in the comments how loud that intro was. That's a brand new intro, hot off the press, right from the Clip Champ. High-tech stuff, I know, but I think I may need to bring the audio down just a tad bit to make the intro just a little more enjoyable so I don't blow your eardrums out. But here we are, another Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and according to the weather, in the next few hours, we're supposed to get some severe weather rolling through, because it would not be Western Pennsylvania, especially not the part that I live in, without the weather completely trying to, I guess, obliterate my conscience. I don't know. I mean, if you watched the Valley Forge stream last Saturday, you know that Readout Productions, we have no luck with the weather. But we'll try to have some fun while the weather holds up, while the internet connection stays put. And today is March 14th, a very, very important day. An important historical event occurred in the magical land of the Bikini Bottom.
Well, Krabs, you know what today is? Sorry about this calendar. March 14th. Wait, that's not right. It should say the day that Krabs fries.
Yes, it was on this day that Mr. Krabs, the proprietor of the famed fast food joint, the Krusty Krab, who was frozen in ice by King Neptune for being accused of stealing his crown, was almost fried on this day. But thankfully for the efforts of the Goofy Goober Club's members of SpongeBob and Patrick, that did not happen. So this is not technically the day that Krabs fried, it was the day that it almost fried. And I can just now see my entire viewership base running away back to their nearest historical textbook, looking for some sanity, because Readout Productions has completely lost the plot. Look, it's a gag that people my age, it's an inside joke of ours on what March 14th is. But tomorrow will be March 15th, and that is the Ides of March, which historically is seen as the date that Julius Caesar was assassinated by members of the Roman Senate. So, we're close to a significant historical date, just one day before. This is the one that's more fun to talk about. It's less gruesome in the end. Although freezing a crab in ice may be a little gruesome. What does that do to the organ? Anyways. We actually do have some topics tonight that are unrelated to what the title is. I just did not know what really to label tonight's stream, because we're going to cover a few different subjects. A lot of news we'll be talking about tonight, just random articles I found. Some of it's historical related, some of it's not. There is one major story we're going to cover, and it's about when and when not to do historical interpretations. There was an interesting article that came out from a Colorado magazine that I kind of stumbled across via the algorithm. So I'm looking forward to get into that. And Ghost of Howard's right arm is running away. He has seen my Zoomer humor show its colors. I do not know how an arm can run, though. Of course, there was that arm in Evil Dead. It was able to crawl over the place and kick Bruce Campbell's ass for 2/3 of the second film. So I guess an arm can run away. Who knows? Who knows? All right, let's get things geared up for tonight. Gotta get the window ready. That window. This one right here. So, I I kind of just saw this out of corner of my eye. We had some clickbait headlines on the TubeView that were declaring that TikTok had officially been banned by the United States government. Well, I'm like, well, I would have heard something more severe. It's not quite there yet. We're still in U.S. Congress deciding this. But this article comes from NBC News, which are related to the MSM. So highly credible. I promise, guys. The mainstream media never lied to us citizens of the United States of America. What would a TikTok ban look like for users? Experts say that if the bill becomes law, it could encourage creative means of circumnavigating a ban to access the app. Yeah, that would be, considering what happened last time. Every time they try to ban, anytime the federal government tries to ban something or say you can't do this, yeah, people will try to find a way. You ever heard of prohibition? So actually, this is written from yesterday. So maybe, yeah, this is yesterday's article. So maybe something did change, but I'm going purely off of this article. I didn't see anything more updated about it. A U.S. government ban on TikTok could push users to figure out alternate ways to access the app. Something has become more common in other parts of the world as governments have instituted varying rules on tech companies. On Wednesday, the House passed the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act, which would amount to a ban on TikTok unless TikTok's parent company sells the app. The bill still needs to clear the Senate, but President Biden said last week that he would sign it if it came to his desk. If passed as written, the bill would give the president the power to force certain foreign-owned social media apps to choose between selling them off or being banned if U.S. intelligence agencies deem them a threat. The bill's most vocal proponents and national security officials have said that this would apply to TikTok's parent company, China-based ByteDance, for two reasons. The app has collected over 170 million American users' information and, in theory, could be used to push Chinese propaganda. Yes, in theory. Sure, it's just in theory, yeah. Privacy advocates have long said that TikTok does collect substantially more information on its users than other apps, and a better solution would be to simply pass a substantial data privacy law, which the US does not have. And while China is frequently accused of trying to send online propaganda aimed at swaying American opinion, it's usually strikingly ineffective at it. If the bill passes and Biden is to use its authorities to compel ByteDance to sell TikTok, the company would have 180 days to find a buyer. That would be enormously frantic, said Kate Ruins, director of the Free Expression Project at the Center for Democracy and Technology, a Washington-based tech policy think tank. Oh boy, what a think tanks. They do everything except actually think that opposes the bill. There aren't really that many entities in this world with the kind of money that it would take to be able to purchase something as expensive as TikTok likely is. And in a deal as big, it would probably need to undergo, and I think that would likely want it to undergo, antitrust review in the United States. An antitrust merger review, especially in big complicated deals, can take a long time, likely longer than 6 months. It's also unclear that ByteDance has any interest in selling TikTok. They probably don't if they're operating just fine right now, regardless of the U.S. Congress. ByteDance didn't respond to an email requesting comment. Sarah Krabs, director of Cornell University's Tech Policy Institute, said she is skeptical ByteDance would sell. China's not in a great place economically, and this is something they've done that is very visibly successful around the world, so I don't see why they would want to sell it off. If the sale didn't happen, it could set off an unprecedented situation in American history. A popular smartphone app used by half the country's population would suddenly become banned. And you know what's interesting? And I'll drop the link if you want to read the rest of this about this whole situation. It is this app that's being threatened with the ban hammer by the U.S. government. But it's completely okay for the hate book and the Twitter and the TubeView that I'm currently on and all of these other social media outlets that are based out of the United States. It's okay for them to collect data information from users and sell it off to the highest, but that's fine. And then, it's totally not being used to infringe on anybody's privacy or anything, but it's bad because TikTok's doing it because, well, it's another country, which, to be fair, I agree with. I absolutely, we don't want foreign powers, peering into the private matters of our citizens in this country. But, I love this I love this double standard that's developing. It's like, oh, now, only now it's an issue because it's China, and it's okay if we do it domestically. It's okay if we spy on each other domestically. That's completely okay. The reason I'm bringing this up on this channel, you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with history? It comes down to the fact it still comes down to the fact that I know a lot of people use TikTok. A lot of YouTube creators, especially those in the history community, use TikTok to help promote their channels. And then, YouTube try to create their own version called Shorts, and the YouTube algorithm has been completely very, very vicious about trying to push creators to do shorts, even though in actuality, viewership from shorts does not transfer into viewership to other content on your channel. So you may be getting views into your channel, but that's a separate audience, which is personally why I've not really gone into shorts. Also, because I'm not smart enough with technology to make a short clip. I'm not even joking, because I guess you have to film it vertical, and I like my I like doing mine horizontally. Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm a historian. I guess I like I'm okay with long, boring, dry videos, I guess. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm a horrible content creator. But I know a lot of people use this, and some people have seen a lot of good success, and a lot of companies have used TikTok for promotion, and it's done very good for them. So we're in this interesting situation where we don't want these companies being able to sell all of our private information off to who knows what in foreign powers, particularly foreign powers that aren't really friendly with our country at the moment and may be enemies one day. But on the other hand, I have an issue of TikTok. I've never been personally fond of these short content segments. It's just me personally. Uh, Partly because I don't like watching videos vertically. Again, I like seeing things from left to right, not up to down. That's just an eye. I guess it's just how my eyes are set up. So to each their own. If you like the TikTok format, that's fair. But I also am very concerned about what TikTok and many other social media outlets have created in the past few years. We got a generation of people being raised right now, and they've been exposed heavily to these very short segments, 15 segments flip, 15 flip, 15 flip. You're really eating into the attention spans of these younger generations. And you see this unfold. You see a lot of people, they're not able to concentrate. You always hear talks about stuff like, you hear talk about attention deficit disorders being on the rise. You hear about all these uh, various disorders that are being diagnosed, and it's becoming more and more commonplace with the younger generations. And if being personally, I think a lot of it stems from overexposure to this. And I'm not saying I'm better than everybody else. Absolutely not. I mean, I've already been on the internet way too much than I should have at the age that I've been. It's only been in the past few years that really I've started actually getting into reading proper textbooks. Like growing up, most of my history came from a screen, albeit a television screen, but it was not usually from reading. So I'm a victim. This whole culture we're now living in, where we're more and more exposed to screens that are sending the information in our brains. Not necessarily a wrong thing, and may make it easier for people to learn. But this whole, I guess, niche of flip, skip, okay, okay, okay. It's grown very detrimental, and we're having people who are not able to concentrate in they're not able to concentrate, which makes it difficult for them to study, makes it difficult for them to hold down a job. So on the other hand, maybe something legally lies should be used to reform these social media outlets. I'm no expert. I'm seeing this from both sides, is what I'm trying to say. On one hand, I know a lot of people use these short videos formats, and they've done really good to promote businesses. But on the other hand, I don't think that's actually transferring over to viewing other content. They may be viewing your shorts, but are they really going forward and they're going to watch your more in-depth content? Are they truly going to become more invested? And then there's the whole matter of that we have all these tech companies that are just completely taking our information and selling it to the highest bidder. Who knows what? Foreign powers, our own government? What are they doing? Why do they need that information? Why do they need to know that I'm looking at cat photos? Why? What is that? Oh, it's nothing important. It's nothing to concern yourself about, but it's merely because you're doing it. Why? And that's why I'm curious, and that's why I'm skeptical. We were at Valley Forge this weekend, and von Steuben, who was the drill master there for the Continental Army, he said that the American genius, because I do think he meant it as a sarcasm, but there may have been truth to as well, that in other countries, we tell them what to do and they comply. But in America, we tell them what to do, then they ask why. And I must explain to them why this step is important, and then they will do it. That's where I'm standing on this. Why are you taking all this data? Why do you need to know about all these things from all these individuals? So, yeah, that's my little rant about TikTok. For those that are watching, if you use this as a tool, great. I hope it helps you grow your whatever platform you're on, especially if you're in the history community. I want more history content on social media so we can use social media for a net positive. But a lot of these fads and trends that social media operates with, it's created a lot of net negatives in the lifestyles of current and future generations. So that's all the more I got to say about TikTok. You guys can fight it out in the comment section below. Let me go down for the comments. Hey, look, a Wrangler has dropped a 420. Yeah, we got to drop that every time. That's probably my favorite clip to drop. It's one of Pink Floyd's best songs. So, and we got Ghost of Howard's Arm chiming in on this. TikTok is great because all the crazies congregate there where we can keep an eye on them. That's one way to put it. Ghost of Howard's right arm. Chinese should be made to buy our info just like everyone else. Yeah. Shorts are like fast. And this essentially what boils down to. Shorts are like fast food. A cheap frill, well used to be cheap. So yeah, that's my gripe on the whole situation. So I don't. Yeah, I don't have nothing more to comment on that one. Let's get into some more fun stuff, shall we? I saw this like 5 minutes before we went live, and I'm like, I gotta talk about this. I gotta talk about this because of the irony. Yellowstone fines Pierce Bronson $500 for walking through thermal area. No, not the show Yellowstone. The Yellowstone National Park has issued Pierce Bronson a fine and has required him to pay several fees after he walked through an off-limits thermal area in the park. I guess Bronson is method acting for the sequel to Dante's Peak. Come on, I had to. Come on, this writes itself. According to the Department of Justice in the District of Wyoming, Bronson was fined $500 for the incident, is required to pay a $1,000 community service payment to the Yellowstone Forever Geological Fund. He is also required to pay a $30 court processing fee and $10 special assessment. Bronson, a resident of Malibu, pleaded guilty to foot travel in a thermal area of the park. The actor posted photos of himself to his Instagram page, standing on a thermal feature at Mammoth Hot Springs. Man, this really is just getting on the nose with the Dante's Peak references. DOJ said there are signs posted in the area that warn visitors of the risk of thermal features and require tourists to stay on the designated boardwalks and trails in the area. And a lot more of this is just a lot more boring procedure. Just remember the motto, take nothing but memories, leave nothing but footprints. But add on to that, don't leave footprints in the hot springs. Yellowstone don't like that. We don't like that. Pierce Bronson. Sorry. Charles Bronson. Pierce Brosnan. Sorry. I'm thinking about, if I said Charles Bronson, it's because actually I just drove past his childhood home today. Because you know, he's from not, what would you call the Conemaugh River Valley? It's technically, many people see it as Western Pennsylvania, but it's on the very eastern fringes. So I drove past Charles Bronson's house. But yeah, no, Pierce Brosnan Yeah, he took a step in some hot springs. He was method acting for the sequel Dante's Peak, apparently. All right, that's really all the more I had to say. I just thought it was funny. I have nothing more to do on that. I'm gonna have a drink of water now before we get to our main topic. All right, back to our show. Now, our main topic is about living history interpretation and when not to do it, I guess. An interesting article was released in the Colorado Sun by Kevin Simpson. I'm going to drop the link in the description below. Just give me one moment in the comments. I know where his hometown is. I don't know exactly where the home itself is. It's a little coal patch community called Ehrenfeld, uh, located in the Conemaugh River Valley in Pennsylvania. And I was up in the Johnstown area today filming some episodes of Retracing History. So that's where that's how I came across Charles Bronson. But well, came past his hometown. I did not come across Charles Bronson. That'd be very weird. That means I just talked to a ghost. And that would be scary. Anyways. So an article has been released about a controversy that's developing at Bent's Old Fort, which is a National Historic Site. The short of it is there's a new superintendent in town, and they want to, according to the article, to dress down the current living history programs. And current and former members of that program are speaking out and are not too happy about these changes. So we're going to start reading through. I'll speak where applicable. I can't really speak today. Bleh. As a former high school and college history teacher, John Carson loved to see the reactions when he made his entrance into the plaza at Bent's Old Fort National Historic Site on horseback. With authentic looking clothes and moccasins evoking the persona of an 1830s hunter-trapper, Carson for 14 years researched and play-acted living history of the era as a park ranger interpreter, igniting in visitors, kids especially, a keen interest in the region's past. Make sure my audio's working. From the very first day, Bent's Fort has been known as a dang good living history site, while folks could visit and get an idea of what life would have been like here in the middle of nowhere in the 1830s and 40s, says Carson, 67 and retired from reenacting. The place comes to life. Now, under a new superintendent only months into the job, Bent's Old Fort has become the flashpoint of controversy over changes brought on by the site's badly aging infrastructure, by reconsideration of the role of livestock, and perhaps most pointedly, by shifting perception of the value and limitations of living history practices that have enticed participation by many volunteers. Public concern has intensified as word of changes at the site spread in the wake of an independent columnist report that recommended new and more efficient ways to tell the fort story, especially regarding the use of living history. Superintendent Eric Leonard, I'm sorry, Mr. Leonard, I can't speak today, who began overseeing Bent's Old Fort as well as Colorado's Sand Creek Massacre and Amachi National Historic Sites, says he understands the connection many folks, and especially the volunteers, feel with the park's living history. But I think the nuanced realization here is we're at a point now where relying on it as the only tool is not really sustainable. It has a lot of building costs and doesn't reach as many people as we really have an obligation to. Bent's Old Fort is an extraordinary American story, and I think what everyone in these conversations has in common is that people are passionate about it and they want to tell the story. They want the park to succeed. Trim back winter hours and reduce access to the parts of the fort already had raised concerns. Talking of reduction to the living history aspect has generated more calls, letters, and social media chatter, and even moved some public officials to stress the importance of living history and ask the Park Service to reconsider any changes. For instance, State House Representative Ty Winter and Senator Rod Pelton wrote a letter to the National Park Service expressing concerns shared by constituents that have stirred unease among those who hold the fort dear. It added that removing living history elements may compromise the immersive experience that has set Bent's Old Fort apart. So we're going to take a pause right now So again, the situation is right now, according to this article, Old Ben's Fort, which if you're not familiar with it, it was a frontier fortification built by the United States government in the 1830s in Colorado. So at a time where we're beyond the frontier, we're in outer space. This is the 1830s out here, but it was a very key trading post. Guarded settlers taking their gamble, going across the Louisiana Territory. There was a variety of different native rendezvous that were hosted here, peace conferences hosted here. You probably don't realize it, but you actually have seen this fort before, at least a reconstruction of it. It is shown up in a few of westerns. I know it shows up briefly in the miniseries Centennial. It shows up, I want to say it shows up in How the West Was Won as well, but I'm not certain that. So it's this adobe fortification. If you've seen an adobe fortification in the movie, chances are it's this fort. So very renowned in the historical community. What it's sounding to me, for at least from the article, is that they're having a funding situation, that there is a intense shortage of funding going to this national park site. Because in addition to this debate over cutting back on the living history, later on in the article, it also talks about that hours have been reduced to the historic site, which that seems to me more representative of a budgetary problem, which if that's the case, that's out of the hands of the staff at the Old Bent Fort. That's out of the hands of Superintendent Leonard. That's going high up into the federal government. And living history, which has always been one of the most expensive hobbies you can ever get into in the 21st century, the cost has spiked extraordinary, especially when the pandemic happened. A lot of the material, a lot of the appropriate stuff, at least. Now you can go buy the Pakistan stuff. I don't advise that. I'm talking about the quality stuff made here in the United States that's using the practices that the artisans did hundreds of years ago. These are trades being lost every day. There's a local site near here, had a variety of living historians. I know at least two of them have died in the past 3 months. And when these people go away, unless you're there to apprentice under them to learn this lost art, that trade is gone. Where are you going to find? Where are you going to go get these authentic goods be reproduced? So the cost is going up exponentially. There really isn't a solution to that because the only solution is actually learning this trade, which requires many hours, a lot of labor in this day and age where, trying to hold down even two jobs really isn't cutting it even. People, it's not that they're not caring. People just do not have the time to devote to learning these trades. So a lot of stuff gets lost. A lot of sites across the country are facing situations like this, budgetary restraints, cutbacks, not even on the national level. I'm talking on the state level and on the private level as well, which is why if there's a museum in your area that you really enjoy and you want to, and you like going there and you like taking friends and family to there, if they have a membership program, consider joining. Memberships do really good, and they're a big income for a lot of these historical sites, especially the private ones, the smaller private ones, because all that what you're giving every year, that is going into helping out with living history programs. It's helping out with ensuring that they can get more merchandise in the stores. It's ensuring that they'll be able to acquire new equipment. It's ensuring that the lights keep on and ensure that they're able to get staff. A lot of it is just coming strictly from donations. So if you have a museum in your area, and you even I'd say if you go to it twice a year, twice in 1 year, consider becoming a member. It definitely goes a long way and gives back to the community. But we're going to keep reading a little bit more before I continue more of my thoughts. Ultimate Kahuna peaks info. Which native tribes were the biggest danger to pioneers traveling west? Unfortunately, I am not a historian on that area of the United States. I can't speak to in detail. I know the Apache existed. Their name gets brought up a lot. You have Lakota Sioux living all throughout that area. But that I'm really just scratching the surface. I'm not even talking about the Eastern Woodland nations that were forced into what we know today as Oklahoma and the Indian Territory. And that caused a lot of strife, which is why you have a lot of these tribes that were in Texas and more of the southwestern part of the United States. They're going to be attacking these travelers coming across, not just because they're invading their territory, but also they've lost land to other tribes that they really had no contact with before the 19th century. So I apologize not being able to go more in detail on that. Just not my field of study, but the Apache and the Sioux are just two tribes that come off the top of my head. And it really depends on the situation, what clan, what village that you come across. There's a lot out there. Pawnee were out there. I'm just trying to name it off the top of my head. All right, I'm trying to get things readjusted. For Carson, whose great-grandfather, frontiersman Kit Carson, that's why that name sounded familiar, frequently visited the fort. I was about to say, frequently visited the frontier. He got on the Enterprise and went to the frontier, which was Old Fort. Frequently visited the fort as a hunter employed by the Bent brothers. The pushback underscores the strong connection many in southeastern Colorado feel to the historic site. Oh, so this is one of the trading company forts. Okay, I'm going to reel back a few things said about this being a federal fort initially. This is a company. Basically, this is a company fort. What I mean is you had a variety of these different trade companies that went out there and were trying to be a third party between people back east and tribes out west. They're the ones that would go out there and hunt in the Rocky Mountains, and they would typically have base camps, which were these forts, which, that makes sense, is Colorado. If you want a good visual of that, definitely watch The Revenant. That gets in a lot into about the Thomas Glass story. It is Thomas Glass, right? It's Mr. Glass. I know that for certain. Again, I'm not much of a Western historian. I did start reading a book on Jim Bridger because of the song, which is one of my favorite drinking songs. Is the Jim Bridger book up? Yeah, it's over here. It's over here. I didn't get to finish it, but I would recommend this as a biography on Jim Bridger if you want to get a good slice of what it was like to be in the early 19th century as a frontiersman. This covers Jim Bridger's story. There's a mention of the class, a survival tale in there as he was, and people do believe he was a part of it. But yeah, you can learn more about how the trading companies worked out there. Basically, these third parties just going out there and doing it. Then, they would be paid by individuals or by the federal government or states or by tribes. It was this whole thing. So I definitely need to go do more research on this. But again, this is way out of my periphery, way in terms of history. Quite frankly, I won't walk on the place as it's being run today. A lot of folks still associate me with Bent's, and it's embarrassing to be associated with the place as it's run now. The attitude would definitely have to make a 180 before I'd even think about going back up there. Backlash over changes to the park comes amid a broader reconsideration of museums, landscapes, and public spaces as vehicles for employing living history, with new attention paid to perspectives that have previously been underrepresented and sometimes represented by white actors playing other racial roles. So there you're bringing up one of the big gripes you have today. A lot of people getting riled up if you have a Caucasian portraying somebody of a different ethnicity. My stance personally on it is, as long as you do it in a tasteful manner, I don't think it's worth getting upset. If you do your research and you devote considerable time, or you find a way that, hey, how can somebody of my appearance fit into this time period? Like what exists? And believe me, those answers are there. If you have a difficult situation in history, like, I want to portray this, but if I dress like this, I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb. It won't look correct. Do enough digging. I promise you're going to find a historically accurate solution. It never fails. So keep moving down a little bit farther. And while there's common ground on issues like improving representation among all cultural groups, the uncertainty and concern many locals feel about the direction of the fort comes from connections dating back to childhood. Linda Bourne, 74, grew up with the fort. She was in 7th grade when she first visited the site, which at that point was nothing but a field with a foundation. Over time, she saw the fort's reconstruction, which further spurred her interest and eventually led her to invest time and training to become part of living history events, learning the speech patterns of the period, the dress, even detailed to portray first a laborer and later a cook. I've always wanted to know what was in the past. So to me, that just brought it to life. And I want to share it because it's an important part of who we are. Leonard understands the ties that bind so many to the site and says there will always be a place for living history. The question is just the best and most suitable way to present it. A broad observation about living history is that the people most interested in how it functions are the people that participate in it. The general public will come as an audience member, but the sausage making around it is not necessarily something that they're particularly interested in. Again, as I mentioned, the enormous cost, which is just getting worse and worse to do a proper interpretation. So again, this is definitely sounding like the situation that's happened at Old Ben's Fort, or Ben's Old Fort. I like Old Ben Fort. That sounds better. Old Ben sounds like an old uncle I haven't talked to in a while, and I'm gonna have some rye with him. This historic site sounds like it's suffering at what many sites have suffered from, especially the past few years, which is just underfunding. And well, the answer to that is uh, pester and pester your local congressperson. That's the truth. Not saying it's going to go anywhere, but a lot of these sites are in dangerous need of resources, and if they're on a government site, they require they're requiring a lot from the government being fed down from the top, while private sites are a little. While the private site has a lot of difficulty raising funds in the start, I usually feel once the snowball starts running with a private site, once you see what a private site's capable of, the first phase of their projects, then the speed of the snowball picks up as more funding comes in, more people buy a membership. That's just my personal experience from the matter. But in either end, it's not easy. I mean, being funded on a government level means, hey, we're guaranteed funds coming from somewhere. Doesn't mean it's going to be a lot of funding, though. And that fund can go from being very big to very small in the matter of a year or two, depending on who's in power. If you do it from the private level, well, you got to use all your muscle power to raise that funding from the ground up. And if you have a very, very obscure topic that doesn't have a lot of historical research done, and you're trying to do the research, you got an uphill battle. I champion that uphill battle. Don't take me wrong, but you got an uphill battle. Ben's Old Fort National Historic Site sits just north of US 50, east of La Junta. I'm going to say La Junta for now. It might La Junta, though. Marking the structure first built in 1833 as a nexus for commerce along the Santa Fe Trail by brothers Charles and William Bent and Syrian Saint Vrain. It stood as an isolated permanent settlement, not under control of Mexico or Native Americans, and did brisk trade with the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. There you go, Kahuna. There's two other tribes. They're hitting my name. Once you start naming them, then like your brain opens up like, hey, dummy, you remember this giant file you have stowed away up here? Yeah, you should have gone to that 5 minutes ago. My brain's weird. It's a borderland where, often for historic purposes, we try to draw hard lines. Those lines were very fuzzy at the time. During the period of its operation, it was a very fluid landscape of culture, sovereignty, and commerce. Indeed, these trading posts, they are melting pots of culture, especially when these are private enterprises at that time. You know, it's an outlaw land out there. Anything goes. It also served as a staging area for explorers and U.S. Army detachments before a cholera epidemic promoted William Bent to move his operations, eventually to the location known as Bent's new fort and what is now Lamar. Although the original fort was destroyed in 1849, site came out of the National Park Service in 1963, and eventually the fort was reconstructed with the aid of historical depictions and diaries, a project that aligned with the nation's bicentennial of 1976, as well as Colorado's centennial celebration. Leonard notes that at the time of the reconstruction, living history was relatively new and cutting edge, and was mentioned in the fort's 1975 master plan. By the 1980s, the fort embraced living history as the tool in the site's storytelling toolbox. But as the gathering of reenactors evolved into social events that produced what he describes as legendary stories around alcohol use and weapons, Yeah, I've heard some horror stories in the reenacting community about that. The program adopted some stringent standards. For instance, the participant manual of 1987 covered 125 pages of policy, procedures, logistics, and historical background. Challenges remain particularly around the recruitment of non-white people to fill critical roles reflecting a culture that converged at the fort. Issues also emerged on the national scale. At the Antietam National Battlefield in Maryland, a little more up my alley, Leonard notes a federal court case over a female volunteer who was denied participation at a Civil War soldier event and a reenactment changed the dynamics of living history. She took the MPS to court and won. In December, consultant Melissa Pricer delivered a report assessing Ben's old fort staff and interpretation and recommended a number of changes with regard to living history. Perhaps most significantly, shifting living history from being the primary interpretive tool to a supplementary role. This is where I'm getting a little concerned. When faced with the limitations of living history, many people default to the idea that more training will solve the issues. In all honesty, I believe that living history is a fundamentally flawed method of interpretation, especially when telling diverse, complicated stories. I disagree with you. And this is why I disagree with you. It's one thing to put all this wonderful information on a wall. Many people in the public, and we just talked earlier in tonight's stream about people's attention spans growing shorter and shorter. It ain't clicking. One way you can get most people's attention, even those that have next to no interest in history, let them handle something. Let them see it. Let them smell it. Let them experience the aromas of the 19th century or the 18th century or whatever time period you're depicting. So I do not agree with this statement that this should go from primary to supplementary due to the limitations. It's a difficult thing to portray history authentically. And in many instances, to be quite honest, guys, it is a lot of, you gotta leave some wiggle room. Because I've seen some historians over the years, they'll dress up and they'll go out and do historical interpretation. And let's say we find a new piece of information. It's like, hey, what about this? Oh, well, that's wrong because I'm dressed like this and I'm right. Now, don't go in with that attitude. Leave wiggle room. I always say, so based off the information I have at my disposal, this is what likely they could have been wearing. That's just my personal suggestion to do living history. Always allow that wiggle room that, hey, more information can come out anytime that proves that I'm wrong. I'm working with what the best I got. You may know a lot, but you're not going to be an expert. We're always students of not any type of field of study. Even after some of us, if we end up getting our degrees, and even if we end up starting to teach some of the stuff, we're always learning. We're always thriving to find a new bit of information. I am willing to change all my interpretations if I find a different fact. And like, thankfully, now I got the right information for now. And there's been videos I've done on this channel, even just going 2 years back, that I've found I had a certain amount of information available to me. That's what I worked off of. And I've come back like, those videos I have issues with. Even the Adam Steven video that just came out 2 months ago. I thought I had all my primary sources in a nice order to explain what Steven was doing in 1759. Within 1 week of posting that video, somebody brought it to my attention that there is this other letter I did not know about relating to Adam Steven. It says he was at a different location to where I said. It's just based on I didn't have access to that information at the time, but now I'm glad I know that, and I know that going forward. And let's go through the chat a little bit here. Other countries seem to be more important than ours. Perhaps that's where the funding's going. And Manji has joined us. Hey, thank you for tuning in. Oh, well, I'm glad that you appreciate that approach. I don't know if it's my approach or the approach in the article, but whichever approach you appreciate, we appreciate you appreciating. I can't speak right now, so I'm just going to drop a brief video. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, geography.
Geology.
Yeah, well, actually, seismology.
I love that bit. That's my when my brain cracks during the stream. Just did that. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about geography. Actually, it's geology. Oh no, seismology. Very, very different study. All right, let's delve a little bit more into this list. And what I was getting to wrap it all up, because I may have went down a rabbit hole on that one. Living history is hard to do right, but when you do it right, it pays off in dividends. Old and young love seeing people in appropriate attire, going up and learning about these people of the past. I personally am not into doing I don't go to the level of some where they'll basically portray a historical figure. And that's not that I have an issue with it necessarily. I just feel a little awkward about it because I'm like, this is a person that actually lived. I feel a little weird claiming I'm them because I'm not them. So I prefer more doing like hey, I'm a private in the Union Army in 1864. I don't like doing, I am Ulysses S. Grant. There's people that do that, and there are people that can do it well. That's just not me personally. So I don't personally advise sites doing living history based off of an individual. I prefer more keeping them bland, if that makes sense. Not that the interpretation's bland, but more the I am El Generico. I am Senior Sunglasses. I am John Smith. John Smith in the 17th of foot. Cars driving in the background. The report also noted that living history can be expensive and cause conflict. Like I mentioned, very expensive. Even between costume participants and uniformed Park Service rangers. It suggested the fort begin taking steps to sunset the living history program that it's known today and build a culture of experimentation and encourage management to look at these current shifts as opportunities, not problems. Leonard notes that the consultant gets to ask hard questions, write a report, and then walk away. And that report doesn't actually require us to do anything. It's just an outside review that raises questions, provides a series of recommendations for consideration. So that's interesting too, that the superintendent who's photographed below, he seems that he's definitely reminding the public that this statement that was put here, this is not the statement of the Old Bent's Fort National Historic Site. This is a statement of a consultant that was sent in to give advice on how they can manage their funding going forward. Communication gaps. Steve Kiefer, retired district manager with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, who lives near Los Animas, has many questions. 20 to be exact. Good man. He submitted them to the Park Service on February 7th in the hopes of better understand the review of the site and all of the concerning information flowing around the community. The rumor mill has been going wild out here, and some of it has been accurate and some of it hasn't. But communication would help a lot. Kiefer figures that the issues around livestock and living history have raised the most concern in the community, and is on board with the idea that the fourth story needs to be told from multiple perspectives. There's probably not as much of that as there should have been, but there have been efforts in living history to show some of the Native American side of things, some of the Hispanic sides, and those are good things. And I think it should be done, and I think it should be done personally. Carson recalls that in his experience working in the living history events, it could be difficult to recruit non-white participants to fill some roles, such as enslaved people like Charlotte and Dick Green, who were prominent figures of the fort, or many others headed west in search of a better life. Believe me, the 14 years I was working there, we tried. I think the way we look at those kinds of roles in the modern world, people aren't going to be coming out there for a weekend if they were subordinate to somebody else. Here's what I'm going to say on that. There are individuals out there, few notable ones that actually they're devoted to portraying enslaved individuals. I wish I could show they're on Instagram. I know. I forget. I think it's a husband and wife. I know there's at least a woman involved, and they've devoted like the past at least 15 years of their life just doing it. I think they're based out of Virginia doing enslavement portrayals. Their stuff is really fascinating. I've listened to a few videos. Man, I wish I knew their names because it just, the brain hit me. So there are individuals that do go the extra mile and portray that. I'm wondering if it's because where they're located in Colorado, since enslavement may not be as big of a subject matter as, say, in a place like Virginia, where we're talking about the American Civil War, where you would have more people more willing to do a portrayal about that, considering it's key to the history of Virginia, or it's not so much in Colorado. I think that may be why they're saying, "Hey, we have a problem getting people to do these roles," and that's the logistics. That's the topography where you end up. I'm just reading the comment section over here. I've seen the Living History deal before. It was dope. I'd be worried about people injecting modern politics into a modern version. And that's important too. This goes without saying. If you're going to do Living History, leave your political stands at the front door. And that goes for all groups. I'm looking at you all groups out there. Leave them at the front door. We're talking about politics. You could talk about the politics of your time period. Very different story. I always say, I'm like, oh no, I love talking about King George II and King George III and, blah, 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 this. I'm down with taxes because that's the time period they focus on. Oh, that's fine to talk about because that's part of the history. If it's not set in stone yet, the history, probably a good idea not to talk about it and make a statement you may or may not regret one day. Well, like I said, if there's if there's an individual that can portraying a historical figure, well, I have no problems with it. It's just something I don't feel comfortable doing. And I've had a few bad interactions with people. For those that are in the Gilded, you guys know I went on a little bit of a rant in the chat one night relating to that. I'm not going to go more details on that, but that's just where I stand on it. Scott Magelson, professor and head of theater history and performance studies at the University of Washington, explored issues surrounding living history in his book, Living History Museums, Undoing History Through Performance. He contends the practice is going through an awkward transition as institutions experience a historical reckoning with the injustice of the past. At the same time, he adds, there's an enormous boom in experimental entertainment, from escape rooms to immersive Van Gogh exhibits, because people will spend money to go stand in a white room with Starry Night projected. There's people who like that. I don't know. Museums and historical sites, if they can find a way to tap into this, to be accessible and keep up with these other forms of immersive experience, I think there's a willingness and ready audience out there for them. Megelson says, but it's a struggle right now. And again, because of the financial straits the economy's in, and that these people who knew these I want to say ancient trades, but knew these trades that were passed down for generations, and people today do not have the time, and to an extent people aren't interested in learning it because there's no value, no financial gain from it. So these trades that are creating that creates the materials needed for living history are dying off, spiking the cost. While the boom times of the 70s and 80s reflect a hunger for U.S. history bolstered by the bicentennial, television shows like Little House on the Prairie, the model that drove that interest has disappeared. He adds, families don't pile into the station wagon for road trips. I want to go down, not up. Pursuing heritage tourism, promoting museums and historic sites to question the value of living history. They're faced with asking the question, what's the role of living history program at historic sites when we're not getting the numbers? I just read that. And the numbers we are getting are the grandparents who are remembering the heydays and the people think about they saw on their school field trip. Which, Daddy says, comes another question. Whose story are we telling? Generally, Megelson says it's been the accounts of the white land-owning gentry, the founding fathers of the U.S., the Pilgrims, or moving west, white pioneers and forts that tell a story that doesn't match up with current political tendon. What? Complicated. What word? Chad, is that a real word? Or am I just that tongue twisted because we're laying the show? What? Is guys, tell me in the chat, is complicatedness a word? I don't like that. No, I don't like that word. Think of something else. Well, Kahuna, I'm not going to stop you, but don't be surprised if you get a talking to. Don't be surprised if his ghost shows up in your house one night and lectures you and be like, son, what are you doing? So, yeah, I don't like that word. And while I always go back and forth in the whole that we've had a limited perspective in the past, I would definitely agree we've had a limited perspective. But I would also argue that Native Americans have always been a big prominence in telling the story of our historical past. I wouldn't say they ever disappeared. I think it would be cool to give them more give them more give them more of a voice. Definitely want to see more from their perspective, but I mean, for their when you get to the westerns, though, Western movies of the 50s and 60s are not historically accurate depictions of the past. Don't get me wrong on that. They're dibbly there, and more often than not, I feel they're usually given a lot of respect. One of my all-time favorite movies is The Outlaw Josie Wales, and that movie, it was made in 1975, gives a very good hodgepodge of what the North American Southwest was like. All these different groups of peoples. There were countless and also has one of my favorite scenes. If you've not watched The Outlaw Josie Wales, please do so. It's one of the best American Civil War films ever made. There's a sequence where the local tribe, and I forget what their name was, which tribe they were related with, they essentially captured two of Eastwood's friends due to them essentially squatting on this tribe's land. So Eastwood decides to handle it like men. And what Eastwood does, he rides out and he speaks with the chief of the tribe. Will Sampson, by the way, is who portrays the chief. We lost him way too young. And he basically says, governments cannot get along, but people can. And I've come here as a man to give you the word of a man, and that is that we will take what we need from your land, and you're allowed to take what you need from what we're raising at our farm, and we'll be good. And they're all kind of pretty good with that deal for a while, for the rest of the movie, at least. Again, I'm not using this as historical, as like, that's just what happened in real life. No, but what I'm saying is, these other groups of people have been shown in prominence in past features. I'm getting tired of this whole, we've never seen this. We've never seen blank before in this blank movie. And it's like, yes, I actually have. It's just that you haven't gone back far enough and done enough of your research. I'm always willing for more different iterations, different perspectives, but don't act like you're inventing the wheel. Please don't. Please don't. It annoys me. No, that new movie don't exist. No. What are you talking about? Dance with Wolves? No, this 3-hour film. No, doesn't exist. Telling the story of the Sioux people. No. You just imagine that. You just imagine Dance with Wolves in your head. You just imagine that. Never happened. 3 hours. Kevin Costner never made that movie. Why are you looking at me like so confused? This joke's probably running on too long. I probably should finish the article. Living history is always going to fall short in traditional measures of success, such as return on investment, because it doesn't pay off in the same way that other kinds of interactive exhibits or touchscreens do, he adds. Plus, touchscreens don't take vacations, so they're readily available year-round instead of just occasional weekends. Fair enough. I feel that, but also, please stop with the touchscreens. Stop putting the screens in your eyes and rotting our eyeballs out. Please stop. Go out and touch grass. Historical grass. Put a plot of grass in the visitor center. Have them physically touch grass. The act of touching grass. And then they'll be more interested than doing the digital touching grass on the screen. Leonard notes that early in his career, he too spent part of his work time in period costume, but concluded that no tool is perfect for every audience. For roughly the past quarter century, he says the big living history events at Bent's Fort have occurred 4 to 6 times a year. In 2013, 4 events were spread out over 6 operational days to a total audience of roughly 1,000 visitors, while the year-long audience attendance approached 20,000. Large-scale living history served less than 5% of our visitors in 2023. And that's not an anomaly. That's the practice over decades at this point. Though I am a little confused because you said that you've had 4 to 6 times a year, but you said you had 4 events over 6 operational days. So maybe that's just the writer doing it bad, because when I read this, it makes it sound like that those 4 to 6 events in a year all occurred in 1 week, which, yeah, that would not be a smart move. You're not gonna get the whole crowd, you wanna spread it out, but I think that was more on the writer just not writing out appropriately. That has led him to consider a shift to more frequent but smaller programs. While he acknowledged there is an enthusiastic audience for a living history program, he also points out that the park has an obligation to tell its story to as many people as possible and to do it effectively and sustainably. Now, I am in full support that if you're instead of doing your big living history a few times a year, and you even just take it be a one person, one ranger dressed up and spread out to be more frequently so that almost on a daily basis you have this ranger dressed up in period dress and doing a talk. I'm all for that. That's definitely my preferred living history. Like I said, I'm not really into doing the accent and doing the character portrayals and basically method acting. I'm more in the, hey, I am dressed as this person from the time period, and let me tell you about what these people were like and what they did. That's just me personally. That's just the boring side of my personality show. And again, if you're more into if you can devote your time to doing the research to portray a character properly, I'm not going to stop you. Just not for me. Just not my cup of tea. So if that's what Leonard's referring to, that, hey, instead of doing our big events, we're going to start maybe just do one big event a year, but every other day, then we can have small scale interpretation occurring. That's what I'm all for. In a region with a history of fuzzy cultural delineation, Leonard says, the fort also needs a fluid definition of what living history entails, one that would also include scaled down reenactments. Again, I am for scaling things down, looking at your costs, like, do we really need all this pomp and circumstance? No, cut it. To illustrate, he tells the story of the park's retail store manager who hatched an idea to put into action the last 2 summers by which kids could register to receive replica trade beads, which they then use to negotiate trades with other participants. I would argue very strongly that that's an immersive living history program because you're engaging in that commercial activity that took place. Yes, this is what I want. We're trying to provide opportunities for the public to create their own meanings here. We're telling you the stories so you can come to your own conclusion about what it means to you. There also seems the fact that I'm not going to really read into too much detail. I kind of figured this from the photos I've seen the site. They did a reconstruction in the 60s and 70s. It's an adobe fortification, and half century later, yeah, it's shown its age. So part of the problem I think that the site is facing is that we have limited funding. A lot of it's been going to our living history. Not a lot of it's been going to the upkeep of the site. And that's you got to keep the site standing before you can do the other fun bits. That's honest. So yeah, down here, structure's failing. Closure of the fort's second floor last fall. I'm kind of fast reading because I've been going on long on this. Federal law around historical preservation could push that back to at least 2026 when the site's potential eligibility could open the door for long-range solutions. Oh, this is interesting. So, yeah. So federal law, yeah, the larger long-term structural viability of the fort still needs to be addressed. And then the federal law, once we reach 26, since this will hit the 50-year threshold, that will mean that technically the reconstruction is historic in itself because it's been around for at least 50 years. I see what they're planning here. The anticipated discussions could start late this year around plans to make the site sustainable for the next 50, 100 years. That would be critical to tap into the love that people have in southeastern Colorado, because that would mean, I'm just taking a guess off the little bit I know about these laws. When they hit that 50-year benchmark, that's going to open them to a lot more funding than they would currently, since they're technically not a historic structure yet because they're a reconstruction. But they hit that 50-year mark, then they are, and then they can start tapping into more state and federal level funding. Also, getting some more tax incentives and things such as that. So yeah, that's some of it there. And that kind of finishes it. That's the article. A very interesting read. I do have some questions, Mr. Simpson, about some of the words you use and some of the ways you phrase stuff. to summarize the situation, well, at least what I'm gathering from this article about the situation of Bensold Fort, Bensold Fort is facing what many historic sites are facing across the country right now, which is constrained funding. That happens both on the federal and on the private level, but where the private level can go out and do more and more fundraising, they can go out, it's like, hey, it's up to us. It's up to our muscle. However much energy we want to put into this, we'll get the word out. Where on this situation, their funding's all coming from the federal government. And depending on who's in power, depending on what's going on economically in the country, that's going to make your funding expand or shrink. Yeah, history stocks. Get in on them history stocks. So that's what's occurring at Old Bent's Fort, but it's other places across the United States. Funding is becoming tight. This has been seen, especially after the pandemic. The cost of living history is going up exponentially, which is forcing some sites to reconsider how they're going to do it. And unfortunately means some sites are going to cut their living history programming. And I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think these sites want to do it either. I don't get the impression that the people at Old Bensold Fort want to be doing this. I think that they want to expand on living history. They've shown like, hey, we're thinking these ideas. We're trading beads from the gift shop as it would have been the trade system in the 19th century to get the kids into it. The physically getting to hold replicas of items that would have been around the period, that gets people into history. But as the funding diminishes, that's less and less able to be done at these sites. And they're going to look at alternate ways to tell the history, which is through no touchscreen. No, stop the touchscreens. No, we have enough touchscreens in our society. The living history is the way to go. So again, if you have a museum that you like to go to, and particularly one that does living history, consider becoming a member if they offer a membership program. And something I've also noticed is a lot of these park sites, I've only noticed this in the past year or two, a lot of these park sites also have a technically unrelated nonprofit that volunteers to provide assistance to them. I was just at the Johnstown Flood National Memorial today. Yes, Johnstown flood content's coming on the channel at long last. There is actually, I think it's called the Friends of 1889 or the Friends of the Hunting Club. I'm uncertain. There's a friends group that does a lot of the manual labor in restoring structures around the dam that caused the flooding. That's not actually the national park themselves doing that. A lot of that is volunteer work. Gettysburg is like that. And when you go to Gettysburg, you have the national park site itself and the rangers and everything. But you also have the Gettysburg Foundation, which is a private entity that actually own the visitor center. The visitor center at Gettysburg is not federal property. It's actually a private property. So that's something I've learned in the past few years. It's very interesting. They work together, and you need both. You need both in all. You need your employees that are being paid by whatever entity, and you also need your volunteers that'll go above and beyond the call of duty. Both sides do that, by the way, too. But you need both. You need the non-for-profit, you need the volunteer groups, and you need these funding on state and federal levels. Combined together, great things can happen. But unfortunately, right now, we're in a very tense time economically. And if things don't improve, I'm scared for what the future of living history and historical interpretation will be throughout the United States. Historical stonks. More are created every single day. Indeed. Hell dog doesn't exist either. Grass, touch it, smoke it. For the record, Readout Productions does not condone the use of recreational or illegal drugs. That does not stop Readout Productions from partaking in them, but we are an educational channel for all ages, of course. So just gotta throw that disclaimer out. I don't have that PSA for me and Humble Collector, where we're like, yeah, don't drink and drive. We don't condone that. We drink, but we don't condone drinking, even though we're drinking. It's the whole thing. Great event. Oh, you guys are cracking me up. Well, history needs more grass. Oh no. What have we started? What have we started? Well, all right. That is almost going to do it for tonight. We do have one more little thing. A little thing it appeared. The TubeU algorithm gifted me with a video, and it was a clickbait title. And I paused and went, "This is going to be made by an AI, ain't it? Or going to be made by a content farm, view farm." Well, get ready. This is going to be a ride, folks. I actually got to remove this and then. So what we got to view tonight, our viewing pleasure, Dark Side of History, Why You Should Avoid Gettysburg Battlefield. Probably the most favorite place of Redoubt Productions, especially in the past few weeks, is Gettysburg National Military Park. We have produced, I think somebody should do a graph. That actually should be me doing the graph, but I'm going to make the chat do the graph. Yes, you volunteers out there, you do the graph. I think, what are we at? 40% of my content is Gettysburg now. That's not what I intended, but here we are. I'm not going to complain. So I highly encourage you to visit Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And there's a lot of cool stuff in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And I love digging up the obscure history of Gettysburg. But this video claims that you should not go there, that it is in fact a dangerous place to go. So I gotta remove this because I want to share the audio. And I'm gonna have to do a dance. I like doing dances. Then just don't do them on screen because dancing on screen is a little awkward for me. And while I'm doing this, I'm just gonna. For those that haven't seen yet, you guys notice what day it is? It's a particular day. If you're just tuning in, it's a very important day in history.
Well, Krabs, you know what today is? Sorry about this calendar. March 14th. Wait, that's not right. It should say the day that Krabs fries.
And somebody just won big pipes driving up the mountain. Glad we all know you're there. Yep, today is the day that Krabs almost fried. But here we are with the video from Travel Chamber, which appeared on the TubeU about 2 months ago. And there's many of these. There's many of these just popping up. I've seen them over and over, these history channels or travel channels. And you just watching the video, and it's a lot of it you could just tell was royalty-free footage, which is not wrong. I mean, I've seen all sorts of historical creators, they'll go and use royalty-free videos as placements. But you know what I mean, where something's off when you're watching it, that like there's no heart. At least I don't feel there is. And if there is somebody actually making this and they genuinely do care about this content, I really advise maybe finding a different structure, of a different approach how you make it. Here we go.
In the heart of Pennsylvania, Gettysburg Battlefield stands nestled in the heart of Pennsylvania.
Is that even Pennsylvania?
Gettysburg Battlefield stands as a testament to both the valor and the violence of the American Civil War. This place, where history whispers the tales of the past, draws many.
What do you guys think about the voice? Real or AI?
Enchanted by its legacy and beauty. Yet, beneath its serene facade lies a less told story, one of modern challenges and unintended consequences.
Yes. All of those freaking groundhog holes.
Reverence for this hallowed ground is often at odds with the reality of its preservation, as the footprints of visitors and the shadow of commercialism loom over its rolling hills. As we delve into the darker side of this historic site, we're faced with the complex interplay between honoring our past and the impact of our presence. Gettysburg beckons us
that gave me whiplash.
To look deeper, urging us to reflect on how we engage with our history and the footprints we leave on the paths of time. Historical background. In July 8th.
All right, here we go with the historical background. So the video is, and I would agree that any battlefield in the United States is under threat from commercialism, from overdevelopment. And Gettysburg, if you watched any of the videos about Gettysburg from this channel, especially the Robert E. Lee headquarters, you know that there was a period in time, definitely in the 20th century, Gettysburg, heavily developed, heavily commercialized. They had a freaking roller coaster on top of Little Round Top, guys, okay? It's a little extreme. Yeah, let's go ride the dips where our grandfather fell and got wounded.
1863, Gettysburg was the stage for a defining moment in American history. This battle, the bloodiest of the Civil War, changed
Second time you use that clip.
the nation's trajectory and etched Gettysburg into the heart of American heritage. Here, valor and tragedy intertwined, shaping a narrative of sacrifice and resilience. Gettysburg now stands as more than a battlefield, it's a symbol of the price of freedom and unity. As a magnet for those seeking to connect with America's past, it offers profound lessons on conflict, liberty, and the power of reconciliation. This place, where history's echoes are
I believe that's actually a video from the Smithsonian. So that's interesting. I recognize that. That's from the Smithsonian YouTube channel.
palpable, invites us to reflect on our collective journey and the enduring struggles for justice and harmony. The dark side.
The dark
Yet,
side.
amidst
The dark side of Gettysburg is a pathway to many. Some consider unnatural.
reverence and education Gettysburg offers, a shadow falls across its storied fields, revealing the complexities and challenges of preserving such a monument.
Like at time they literally built this. There was a period in Gettysburg history where there was, I kid you not, a space needle, like Seattle level space needle, overlooking Ziegler's Grove. And actually, in this video, it would have been roughly to the back left of the video. It got torn down in 2000, thankfully. But I know people have fond memories of it, but I've seen photographs. Gee, that was an eyesore. And to our left, we have where Lewis Armistead led about 200 Virginians across a stone wall. And to your right, you have the Space Needle. Yes. No, you're not in Washington.
Monumental piece of history. The very popularity of Gettysburg, driven by its significance and beauty, has sparked concerns that extend beyond its historical lessons. The environment, a silent witness to history, now faces the pressures of modern footfall. Each year, the multitude of visitors inadvertently impacts the delicate balance of this historic ecosystem, leaving behind more than just footprints in their quest to connect with the past. The battlefield's solemnity is further clouded by the tendrils of over-commercialization, souvenir shops and attractions, while aiming to cater to the educational and commemorative needs of visitors, often tread a fine line between homage and exploitation. This commercial veneer can sometimes dilute the sacredness of the site, transforming areas of reflection into marketplaces.
Again, I really don't have any disagreement on this, but here's what I'm going to say, and this is what the video, this is like talking about Gettysburg in 2000, not 2024. The National Park Service and the borough of Gettysburg are both doing great strides to keep the town intact, as it were, without trying to kill its economy. There was a recent ordinance passed, which I do personally think is a little strict, where they were ordering a lot of the downtown restaurants and bars. They had to pull all of their like neon signage. They had to pull it out of the windows facing the streets because it was obstructing the historical skyline. I don't know how I fully feel about that. I don't think it was really disturbing it too much, but I also get why. The Park Service have been undertaking a 2-year restoration program on Little Round Top. They're completely redoing the pathways as they were indeed getting pretty severely eroded, but they're doing a very good job. They actually had to stabilize the one monument up there as well. So thank goodness they did it when they did, or else it would have toppled over. So yeah, the video's talking like if you go today, it's like, oh, it's all over sprawled. It's not quite like that. The worst part of the development in terms of, I guess, modern encroachment on the battlefield, that would be on Cemetery Hill, which is also where I tend to stay during my nights at Gettysburg. There's some pretty good hotels and restaurants around that area. That's where it's most built up, but it's getting better and better contained as the Park Service recently acquired, well, the American Battlefield Trust acquired property where Pickett's Buffet once stood. And Pickett's got a good deal out of it because they're relocating to this massive former store that used to hold Boyd's Bears about like 2 miles from Gettysburg. Free stories. They're turning into a full resort. So there'll be the buffet. There's going to be a hotels there. It's going to be an RV parking. So everybody kind of won out of that situation. We got to take away part of the 21st century skyline, restored it back to its 19th century appearance, and the business got a better building. Everybody won.
Moreover, the rise of ghost tourism has introduced the controversial layer to Gettysburg's narrative.
Oh, the ghost tours. Here's how I'm going to lose subscribers. I do not like the ghost tours in Gettysburg. In fact, for most historic sites. That does not mean, again, I'm not going to stop people from going on the ghost tours. And that doesn't mean I'm going to stop people from studying paranormal stuff. My thing on paranormal investigation is you can't prove it and you can't deny it. It's kind of iffy. It's like the best way I treat it in terms of a historical lens, this is folklore. People claim they've seen this happen and see that happen. And I will believe, and there are people I honestly believe when they say, hey, I was at this place and freaky stuff happened. I'm not going to debate you on that. That was your experience. My problem is when it turns into this big wazoo of, we're going to go with the candlelight and we're going to borderline trespass. And I'm going to tell you about how they buried all the bodies right here. When I can pull out the Elliott map and I can show you that there was not any burials within a mile of this location. So I have no problem if you're going to treat paranormal storytelling as folklore at Gettysburg. I got a big problem when you're making up BS. And also, guys, you're paying all this money to go sit in a derelict house all night with some PKE meters. I could do that here at home. I just don't get it.
The fascination with the paranormal, though a draw for some, raises ethical questions about the respect owed to the souls.
But for the record, none of these ghost tours, to my knowledge, none of them do go on park property. It's forbidden just because it's a private endeavor, not approved by the Gettysburg Foundation or by the National Park Service. I've never seen any of them dare go anywhere in the National Cemetery. I don't think they ever would either. They do have that amount. They do respect it. They're like, no, we're not going to go into the cemetery. We're not going to break laws or anything. So I don't like how the video is showing National Cemetery images right now. No, the ghost tours do not go into them. They do respect the boundaries.
Who perished here.
At least these boundaries.
It blurs the line between historical
again with the Smithsonian footage,
challenging us to consider where respect for the past begins and ends. Respect for the dead and the sanctity of their final resting places comes into question as we navigate through the battlefield's present-day reality. The act of remembrance and the pursuit of historical connection, while noble, carry the responsibility of mindfulness and respect. As we walk through Gettysburg, we are reminded that this is not merely a park or a tourist destination, but a site of immense loss and sacrifice, deserving of our deepest reverence. In grappling with these challenges, Gettysburg becomes a microcosm of the broader struggle to balance historical preservation with the demands of
like that. You got nothing more on the dark secrets? I've come here for the deep, dark lore about Gettysburg. This has been a nothing burger. I think I've given more about the ugly side of Gettysburg than this video has.
Temporary society.
No, I'm mad.
It prompts a reflection on how we honor our history, how we protect the legacy of those who fought and fell, and how we ensure that the lessons of the past endure amidst the complexities of the modern world. Consequences. The ripple
hey, have a good night, Kahuna. I'll probably be tuning in soon to watch your stream.
Threatening the integrity and future of this iconic site. The environmental wear, commercial pressures, and ethical dilemmas surrounding ghost tourism and respect for the sacred have the potential to alter.
Also, I'm like, oh, the tours are going to ruin. I want to point out, can I get to the horse? They're like, oh, the tours are going to ruin. They're ruining, the horses are ruining the topography. I want to note that this tour is being authorized by a Gettysburg Battlefield License Guide. The logo on the tour guide's jacket. This is an authorized tour that has complete respect for the property. The horse riding tours, they're not destroying topography. I want to go on one so badly one day. I just never have the resources or time. So yeah, I don't like, and that's what's making me really frustrated about the video content. It's like just the clips are, we grabbed all these clips, slap it together, put some flashy titles. Content.
The environmental wear, commercial pressures, and ethical dilemmas surrounding ghost tourism and respect for the sacred have the potential to alter fundamentally how Gettysburg is experienced and perceived. If left unchecked, these issues could erode the very essence of what makes Gettysburg a vital part of American history, diminishing its power to educate and...
But again, a lot has been restored, a lot has been reclaimed in the past few years. the age of over commercialism in Gettysburg is on its way out. If not, it's already died. We've reached a decent balance. Now, I won't deny that there's a lot of people that disrespect the battlefield, and that's causing a lot of problems. But in terms of the actual commercialism by like individuals in the borough, it's when it's done in a mainly respectful manner nowadays. It's not what it was 30, 40 years ago.
Inspire. The battle for preservation is not just about maintaining
If it was bad, I wouldn't go.
the physical landscape, but about safeguarding the battlefield's soul. It's a call to action for all who hold Gettysburg dear, to ensure that its stories, sacrifices, and lessons endure for generations to come, untainted by the adverse effects of contemporary challenges. Outro. As we reflect on the intricate tapestry
Outro. You just shouted out that cue.
of history, preservation, and modern
Is
challenges.
there anything else in this video? That was a nothing burger. Let's go to the comments briefly because they're a little bit fun. The shadow commercialism has largely been eradicated by Gettysburg. It is true. There was once a gas station on the Sherfy Peach Orchard, was demolished in the 70s. Absolutely true. Again, I got to talk about the Peach Orchard someday. Full video. Fascinating story where they were selling, the farmer was selling peaches from the orchard for for the rest of his life and claiming these peaches were from the battle. Well, he's like, well, I'm not wrong. Were grown in the peach orchard. They just weren't from the battle. I highly doubt they're 30-year-old peaches. Gettysburg's a wonderful place to visit, or urge everyone to go. We're left wondering whether the narrator has ever actually visited Gettysburg and whether the script was put together using ChatGPT. That's how I feel fully on this. Mindless, garbage. Gettysburg is one of the most spectacular yet solemn places on Earth. Went there for years ago. There wasn't even one souvenir standout on the battlefield. Washington, D.C. has those trucks parked all over the monuments, taking up way too many parking spaces. Have you ever been to the Trade Center? Talk about commercialism. I wouldn't call Gettysburg paradise. Adams County is beautiful, though. Adams County has a big apple industry, even to this day, interestingly enough. At least the horrible music almost covers the mindless robo voice. I could have done without the background noise. No mention about the mass data center somebody wants to build on the battlefield. Instead, we get don't visit because of the ecosystem and ghost. It's tourism, and that's what sustains a town in the battlefield. So why don't you take some of the money you get from this video and donate to stop the commercial development? That's what at 00011B says. Gettysburg. Yeah, there's that whole dispute. There really isn't much of a dispute if we pronounce it. So I just want to bring that out because I saw this and I'm like, I had the Tom Hardy Mad Max expression when I saw that title and saw like the font was using. That's bait. Yeah, I always keep popping up these channels. What they call them, content farms, where they just churn out stuff. And it looks seemingly how quality. And you'd be like, why would you criticize? Look how great the footage is. And they're saying all in a nice way. Pull a few layers back, you realize, hey, I recognize where that footage came from. They're taking it from this location, that location. None of this stuff's new. They're reusing footage. They shouted out the cues. Outro, intro. Like, I know we're ending the video. Wrap it up. You should be able to wrap it up more fluidly than that. Oh, shock text. Oh, this is dangerous. This is dark. Okay, bye. So yeah, I think you could definitely. I'll admit I have the salts coming out for me to show how salty I can be about these content farms. They get pushed by the TubeU. They get all the instant clicks. Wow, all of us people down here working from scratch barely can get anything unless the algorithm decides to bless us. So yeah, I'll admit I'm being salty on this. Yeah, but I'm not speaking just for myself. I'm speaking for all the other all the other people I follow that I know put a lot of hard work, sweat, and tears into their projects, and they struggle and don't get many views. Meanwhile, TubeU gifts thousands to this nothing burger. All right. Yeah, I'm getting controversial tonight. I'm getting really feisty tonight. I don't know why. Today's like, so today I have chosen death. I guess that's what I've chosen today. In talking about ghosts, have you seen anything? I have nothing to comment on that one. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed within 500 feet of a horse. And on that note, go see the Ultimate Kahuna, as I believe he has on tonight's stream Herman P. Hunter of Revenant of the Tomb and Revenant of the Cult fame. So I'm going to drop a link to that. That's starting here at 9:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, at least according to the TubeViews database. So it's not history related. Actually, it's something completely unrelated. It is a new piece to our shared culture, because I've always said over and over, I don't feel that our shared culture, what I mean by our books, our movies, our games, our discussions, they're not really healthy right now, at least not in some aspects. You go to certain parts of the United States. I can't speak for the rest of the world. Not a lot of good original content coming out from AAA studios. So why don't we go support the small indie creators instead? Go see what they're working in the wee hours of the night to produce, to entertain themselves and everybody else. And tonight, the Ultimate Kahuna will be shining a light on one of those creators, Herman P. Hunter. So be sure to go check it out. Link is in the chat right now. But guys, that is going to do it tonight. I would like to thank you for tuning in. Before you depart, though, if you haven't done so already, hit the like button to let the TubeView algorithm know that historical content matters, that apparently me talking gibberish for an hour and a half is somehow entertaining. Yeah, let the TubeView know that you're as crazy as me by hitting that like button. And be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to be notified when we go live and when our new videos come out. We typically post a video every Saturday, and we tend to go live every Thursday. But we do have some bonus impromptu streams, like happened last Saturday when I was on the road retracing history. And if you want to go the extra mile in support of me, you can go to the Ko-fi link in the description below. You can purchase me a cup of coffee to wake me up in the morning. Or if you want to join the Garrison, which is our membership program here, you can do that for the Ko-fi page. And by doing so, it's a small fee. You get access to a variety of bonuses, including digital postcards and scripts from past live streams and other select videos. So with that, I'm going to hit the music. I would like to thank too loud. Yeah, so the new intro is a little too big to be a clip on the brand page in StreamYard, so I gotta like pull it up like this. So I'll work it out. So if you haven't seen the new intro when we started, you're gonna see the new intro as an outro. Thank you all for tuning in. We will see you next time.
Boys will relive once again, shouting a battle cry of freedom. We will relive from the hillside, all together from the plain, shouting a battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors, up with the stars. We will reel around the flag, boys, and relive once again, shouting a battle cry.